opposed to it, just speak up.
I agree.
I agree too.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, with that being said, let's move forward. Who should I turn this over to? Because y'all are going to present to us. Is Donna going to be the, okay, Ms. Brooks?
Well, the committee met last week and went over where we thought we would be at the end of the year and talked some about next year, but not a lot. So we decided that in tonight's meeting, we're only going to discuss how we get to the end of the year, which is 6/30. We're projecting at that time to have spent $214,000 more than we have brought in, and our unassigned fund will be somewhere between a negative $400,000 or $500,000, considering that includes the $161,000 that we were short to start with. The state street aid, the school facilities tax, and the unassigned funds all reside in one checking account. And it's possible and very likely that there will not be enough money to cover the state street aid fund. The legal requirements for the city is two things. We cannot have spent more money than the Board of Commissioners appropriated for us to spend. We don't think that's going to be a problem. But we do have to fund all of the restricted funds. So it's the state street aid, the facilities tax, the drug fund. Those two are in separate accounts, but we're trying to come up with a plan for what to do if we do not have the funds for the state street aid. So the committee makes the following proposals. The city manager and the department heads are going to try to cut 5% from the remaining budget for this year. And that would be about $63,000. After the meeting last week, I took all of the accounts out that are kind of set in stone, the salaries, the utilities, the telephones, and all that stuff. I don't think it's going to be possible for them to cut $63,000. It may be. They're going to try real hard. I would say that that's probably more in the neighborhood of $20,000. Because part of the funds that Commissioner Basile counted, I think, were the fire equipment, and it was my understanding that's already been spent, so you can't cut there. The next recommendation is to use the tree fund money as an interim measure. $17,000 of that has already been committed, so there is $80,000 left in there. I think that would require an ordinance from the board. I'm not sure. It would require some kind of vote, I'm sure. And I think we expect the city to put that back into the fund when it has the funds, but I could be wrong about that. Don't hold the committee to that. I think that's what I remember. If we're still short, we propose moving the salaries of the street staff from operations to the state street aid, which will be around $152,000. We don't propose doing any of these things except trying to cut back until we see that we actually have a need. So we wouldn't move the salaries from operations until almost the end of June, when we know where we'll be. To help us get all of our accounts fully funded, we propose selling the Deer Ridge property, and I have no clue what it's really worth. I've heard $200,000. That could be way high or way low. I have no clue. It won't be enough to get us fully funded into our accounts, but it will help us have some cushion, because as it stands, if this is all we do, when we get to the end of June, we will not have any cash flow to go into the next 4 months. And Last year, in those 4 months, could have been 5 months. We spent $450,000 more than we bought in. So it's essential that we think about it today or next week or sometime soon, what we're going to do to make up those differences. Our biggest problem is that we have spent in operating expenses all of the money that we bring in a year, and all of it is not for operating expenses. It's for those other funds. So we bring in 5.2 million, but only 4.6 million of it, or something in the neighborhood, is actually unassigned. And the unassigned is what we pay our expenses out of. The others are special funds for specific purposes. Like the facilities tax is for making the payment on this building. The drug fund is for drug enforcement. The state street aid is for streets. They all and the school facilities tax is for building or renovating schools, and they allowed us to use it for the library expansion. So when we spend all the funds that come in, we're setting ourselves up to be in this hole always.
For the next 3 months, are we expected to operate at a surplus or at a deficit?
A deficit.
Okay, so if we're operating at a deficit, the number that you're talking about, the 472,000 or whatever it was, is already taken into consideration that we're going to be operating at a deficit for the next 3 months. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And so at the end of the year, you project that we will have $239,626 in the general fund that makes up, or that is made up by the unassigned school facilities tax and the state street aid.
Yes.
Correct? And the projected balance in the state street aid would be roughly $209,000, so we're about $30,000 cushion.
So if my projections were right, we would have enough money to do the state street aid. And that's another thing that I had forgot to mention. In our stabilization plan, we said we were going to pull the money out for the state street aid and put it in a separate account where it should reside.
When you say do the state street aid, are you talking about take the money out to pay the street departments?
No.
What do you mean by that?
We were going to take all the funds that belong in the state street aid out
Oh.
and put it in its separate account, just
Separate
like the
account.
park fund is and the tree fund and all that.
If we did that, we would have about $30,000 left.
Yes.
That really belongs to the school facilities
Right.
tax.
Yeah, we will have spent all of the state, the school facilities tax.
So if the library project, if we needed to pay that, we wouldn't have the $60,000 to pay that.
Yes, we would,
We would
because
have
I projected that.
Okay, so that's part of the number.
If we charge salaries, if we reach the point of charging salaries, then the amount required to make the street pay fund reduces. If we charge $152,000 of salaries to that, then we only transfer $50,000. Actually creates a better situation. It's just not something that we're trying to move away from doing. But in terms of your cash flow, it will change that. Instead of being $200,000 that you would need to move over, you would only need to move over the difference between what you charged on the books and salary and the $200,000.
Probably about $60,000.
Yeah, that minus the 152.
And since we've already spent that would be a,
But one of the questions I'd asked Tom earlier is that if we did that, which is one of the proposals, and are these like in any sort of priority? Is it prioritized as to which one we would do first, or is this just we may have to do all of them, or how is this set out, the proposals that you guys have that you've come up with to try to remedy this?
other than the 5%, the other two can be in any order that you want to be. If we were going to sell the property, I guess we would need to start the bid process because it takes some time.
Right. Well, one of the questions I asked Tom earlier about if we took the street department's salary out of state street aid, would we have the money to cover the grant for the repaving project and I think there may be another project coming down the pike, the safer routes to schools or something, or would we have the money there to cover those two grants? Tom thinks so, but it's with respect to the repaving, but I don't know about the.
What was our share of the repaving?
20%.
But
It's 80/20.
Dollar
It's
wise.
80/20. Dollar-wise,
Dollar-wise.
I think 55,000.
It would be
So
close.
we would be close on that, but we would be, probably wouldn't have the sidewalk thing.
The 5% from the budget, the remaining budget, you mentioned telephones and some other things. Are those real possibilities, or are we in contracts with cell phones?
I
and
think when I
various things?
figured it up, I took those things out because they have to be paid, and just left with the supplies and,
Okay.
and repairs and those kind of things.
So what I've heard is 4 different proposals, I think. 5% from the remaining budget, cut 5%, that's gonna be around $60,000?
63.
So that's 63,000. The tree fund money, which has $97,255 in it now, but there's 17,000 that has already been allocated to the, what is it called?
The grant for the
Yes, the grant.
beautification.
Thank you.
You're right,
Roads
beautification.
grant.
Thank you. So that leaves about $80,000 there. But my concern about the tree fund money is when that money was taken in, it was taken in under the existing ordinance, based on the trees that were cut, not replaced by the developments that have come in. So from a legal standpoint, if we wanted to change the use of that money by amending the ordinance or changing the ordinance or whatever, can we give that retroactive application to money that was taken in under the existing ordinance? And I'm not sure that we can legally.
I would not be the person to answer that.
I thought Larry was supposed to be here, but,
I think he's supposed to be here at the next meeting.
oh, next meeting.
Well, I mean, I have concerns about it. I know we have to balance our budget and we got to figure out why, but I would have concerns of, just misleading, the businesses that paid into it. Now, if that comes down to our only options, I would hope the only way we would do that is to have something where we paid it back, in place. So, which that's going to be hard to do anyway with next year with our, we're already trying to build a reserve. So, I would hate to even touch it because there's no guarantee at this point in time that we could pay it back. And so how long are we going to hold it? And then,
If my math is correct, 63,000 from the 5% from the remaining budget, 80,000 if we were able to legally use that 80,000, borrow the 80,000, whatever you want to call it, move the salary, or change the salaries from the street department to the state street aid, and sold that property on Deer Ridge, we're looking at about $495,000. That won't even, by my math, get us back to zero in the unassigned general fund.
well, and I think a better option is to look at the out parcel over off of Dallas Lane. It's 25 acres. It's a bigger piece of land. We heard in the last meeting that it was pretty much useless. I mean, I know they use it for mulching, and but we could find another means. Either we could take it to Deer Ridge, or we could take it to go actually to the dump on Pinewood Road. That to me might be more valuable, and it's a residential area anyway, so I'm not really sure that, I know we talked about using it for park usage, but really we would have to create a back entrance. It's really not, as we talked about in the last meeting, probably as conducive for you know, thinking you were gonna do something in conjunction with the park, that might be the better piece of property to sell. I mean, it's more acreage, we might get a little more money for it, and, you know, a developer may come in and, you know, it's residential neighborhood. It's kind of just out there by itself, being a dump for us, for chips. So that would be my suggestion, is consider getting rid of that piece of property. And then if we had to consider, I'd really like to keep Deer Ridge, just because we know that in the future, we may need another fire, you know, station, and that's already been where they've been looking at. I hate to, and we may have to get rid of both, really. I'm not sure we're even at that point, but I hate to sell land to balance a budget, but I really don't know what else we're gonna do. You know, these are decisions we probably should have been making months ago.
Just a question. What other restricted funds do we have that would be participating like the street aid would as far as salaries go?
You could possibly use the drug fund, but it's about $95,000 in it,
And it's fixed and changed, so.
I'm not sure.
Okay, but anyway, it's 95,000 now. What else?
That and the state street aid is the only two of my knowledge.
About the park.
I'm not sure. I've seen
I'm talking about just the salaries that are directly,
salaries come out unassigned. There's, as far as I know, I'm not seeing any I'm not seeing any history of any salaries ever coming out of the park fund.
but is it possible?
Oh, it did. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I mean, we're talking about street aid, and that, to me, that's the same thing as restricted fund, any way you look at it.
There were many, many, many years that park salaries were paid out of the park fund.
What's the rough estimate of the salaries that are paid out of general fund into the park, for the use of the park strictly, nothing else?
Asking about what the parks.
How many
salaries
employees
are.
do we have that are full-time in the park? And I believe Keith is half of his
Right,
salary.
right.
What would that total come to as far as the account balance for the park? To me, it's the same question as the street aid. Y'all agree or disagree?
Yeah, but we run into the problem of, we've already committed, we just approved the paving project. There's not a lot of money gonna be left after we do the trail, the Joanne's classroom, the paving. I'm not even sure how much would even be left in the park fund.
What's the current balance, Tom? Do you have a rough idea? I don't know, but,
94,000.
Yeah,
so
194,000.
right at 200,000.
Yeah.
What's obligated already? I know there's a question on that current bid that we have for the asphalt in the stage area back there for the classroom.
Yeah, I believe 12,000.
12,000
Just got
out of
delegated.
the 200. What else we got obligated?
As of right now, I think that's it.
The street paving.
Is it
No,
what-
just the
street
park
paving?
fund. 30 and 25. So we got 55,000. 55,000 is obligated right now out of the $194,000 that's in there. I'm just thinking outside the box. I mean, to me, it's exactly like the street aid. It's restricted fund that we have a balance that can be just for what is used by that organization, just like the street fund.
Tom, how much would, for the next 3 months, the salaries, what are we talking about if we took it out of the park fund?
I think they're looking at taking it out for the entire year, not just,
Well,
same with the street department.
Well, I know for this year, but from now to the end of the year,
No,
this budget year.
Well, we need both figures.
That
Both
152
figures.
is going back all the way to the beginning of the fiscal year for the street, for the
Oh,
street
year.
department.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so what's the whole year?
let me,
That would just be adjusting the amount that's paid out of general fund into that.
Right.
Let me comment on the drug fund. That has to be for drug enforcement. So unless we had a policeman who was totally assigned to drug enforcement, which we may have, I don't know.
We do.
Can we move somebody over?
We have one in drug enforcement.
His
so-
complete salary could come out of
Complete.
there, and has in years past, not his, but the other person that we had.
Example is the van just came out of the drug fund. And there's several more items that if they deem it part of the drug facility, whatever it is, then it can be used. That's basically up to Terry
Terry and
and
Brandy,
the recorder, as far as what the charter and everything says on that part of it. So that's just another option that we have to utilize whatever it is that's restricted. I mean, it should be, the salary should come out, just like the car traffic, it comes out of the traffic fund. There's another fund that we can look at. What do we have in the traffic fund?
We collapsed
Okay,
that.
we what?
We collapsed it. I think it was put into the State Street aid.
No, it wasn't. It
Well-
just, we just combined it with the police.
Oh, okay.
But technically, the fines that are taken from that for each citation can only be used for the traffic.
Well, and I'm not so, why can't we use it to pay off, I know it's not enough for the whole loan, but could we not use it to pay for the cars?
That the traffic fund was to pay for the cars and the salary of the traffic officer,
but not the drug fund.
but not
No,
the
but
drug.
what
If they're-
about the-
If they're solely dedicated to drug enforcement, then
But
yes.
there's a lot of equipment that can be dedicated, depends, you have to get with them to find out exactly what can, but there's quite a bit that can be merged into that fund.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be equipment
No, it
solely
can be-
dedicated to drug.
It can be
anything-
percentage, you can,
There's a percentage of it that can go into, so it's quite a bit.
The number for the park salaries for the year is 128,381. Well, that's subtracting out 26,000 for Keith.
But that's just the part that's used strictly for the improvement or classes or whatever the case is for the park, right?
That's salaries for
Maintenance,
park
whatever it
employees.
is. Okay.
every employee and half a keys.
So that's 128,000 that we could change
And-
over to that.
and what's
That's
the
a pretty
amount?
good, that's a pretty good chunk of what we're talking about.
What's the amount?
The total amount of salaries for the park is 154,381. I took out 26,000 for Keith. And now I don't know, the only reason I did that, and I probably shouldn't have, the only reason I did that is because in state street aid, the supervisors can't be taken out. But I guess in this case, he could. So we could go ahead and use the whole number, 154,381.
But then, is that before or after we put our money out for the paving and the things that we have
Well, this is park,
committed?
these are park salaries.
I know,
We
but
wouldn't have enough.
we wouldn't
cover
have
all
enough
those
because it
salaries.
was,
If we took out the paving and the 12,000 for we wouldn't have enough to cover all of it,
Be
so,
close,
could-
but not
only
all.
part of it.
We're probably about $18,000 short, the way I looked at it. Is that pretty close, Keith? You said 54,000, Wayne?
12,000 for
The ATV and the shelter or whatever, or not shelter, but stage.
So we had 12, and then you said
55.
55
You got
67.
130,000 left.
Yeah.
and 128 in salaries.
Yeah.
So we're 2,000 to the good.
No,
No,
he did all the salaries.
it's about 18,000 short, yeah.
Oh.
18 short.
well, I would really want to save what we've already committed. So any money that we've already,
Absolutely.
so could we take, the difference of one or two people and still keep them and then only take certain salaries? Or is there some kind of regulation where either we need to show it all came out of the park fund, or how does that work with MTask or?
As far as on, I'm not sure. I'm thinking you can divide it up based on how the board deems necessary. I'll have to double check, but I believe this is just a committed fund, and I believe it's at your discretion, but I'll get certainty on that.
It's correct.
Is there anything we can do, like, is there non-essential employees that we could move somewhere else temporarily? Is there somebody that I mean, I know we have the park's busiest time of the year, but is there anything else you can come up with that might?
What's the benefit to moving them?
Well, I'm just saying coming up with the money somewhere else, like could one of them go to street, go to the street aid or, I know Mr. Hyatt moved them around all the time, Just, it would be a temporary.
Well, I mean, if they're classified, if we've got some we can take out of street aid and some we can take out of park, I don't think we need to reclassify anybody if the money is in those two funds.
Justify it.
Right. I don't think we need to move just 3 people from park to street just to take money out of street. You let them stay where they are and we find a solid figure to work with and we go from there.
In both situations, you improve your overall posture. As we said before, if you move employees into the street aid, that improves your deficit posture in terms of trying to fund the street aid in line with the stabilization policy. If you charge employees to the park fund, then that actually improves your cash flow because there is money in that fund and you go and you get that money and you put that money in the bank. It's not just a bookkeeping entry. So it gets you, both improve your posture, but they do it in different ways, and that's important. The only thing that I would say is that, to my way of thinking, the park fund is a more important fund than the tree fund. It's lasted longer. It's established to a specific thing. We are using it for specific projects. And it doesn't make much sense to me to take money from that fund when there is another fund that we don't really have a designated purpose for, just sitting there with the money. And that's where I come from. It'd be nice if we didn't have to take it from either place, but you can't get to sum zero without taking it. And so that's why I lean toward taking the money from the tree fund, because the park fund to me will be has a specific purpose, and it's being used in that purpose, and it's essentially the same amount of money. You don't ultimately, if you take $150,000 from street aid, then you don't need but $65,000 to make it all work. If you get $20,000 in further budget cuts, now you don't need but $45,000 to make it work. So do you take $45,000 from the tree fund? Do you take $45,000 from Bowie Park Fund? To me, you take the money from the tree fund because it's just a better place to take it from. That's the way I see it.
Well, go ahead.
Commissioner Vassell, these numbers you're talking about balancing the budget, getting us to balance the budget, the $214,000 that we would need to balance.
Correct.
But balancing the budget is not even going to begin to resolve our problem. I mean, we would still be sitting there with a negative balance in our unassigned and these two funds not fully funded. Would that be right?
If you move the money from those funds to the tune of $250,000 or something, we'd probably still just be negative the 161 we started with.
What I'm interested in finding a solution to is getting us back to zero in the unassigned general fund to begin next fiscal year. And we're not talking about $214,000 just so on paper it looks like we balanced the budget. That's talking about getting us back to where we're starting on a level playing field going into next fiscal year, but we need about $500,000 to do that, not $214,000. And these solutions, based on my math, gets us almost there, but not quite there, if we get all of them.
It takes care of the legal issue.
And, right, it takes care of the legal issue, but then also there's a question as to whether or not we can even use the tree fund money.
Here he is.
Mr. Cantrell, the tree fund, as it's established now by statute, the funds that were taken in under the existing statute, if we now went and changed the statute to redesignate those funds, would that statute, or could that statute have retroactive application to the funds that were taken in under the existing statute?
Not unless you change it, said to have retroactive.
But you could with ordinance, to make it
As it
retroactive.
stands right now, you can't, because there's no way, I don't know what you're planning to do with it, but there's no way that it would come under any definition of landscaping.
That, right, which is what it's designated for right now.
Right. You'd have to change the ordinance.
That's the
What
point.
kind
That's the
of,
point I'm trying to make, if the ordinance was changed.
And that's what we tried to do 2 or 3 months ago.
But would that make it, would the change be applicable to funds taken in from this prospectively, or could it also apply to the funds that were taken in under the existing ordinance?
To change what you designated to do.
Once we change it, we could use it for whatever we change the purpose for, correct?
Yes.
Even though we collected that based on the premise that it would be used for designated landscaping projects.
Yeah, but if you change the ordinance, you're not gonna have to keep them separated.
well, what's the liability? I mean, can we tell a business we're taking this money and then,
You're gonna take the money
Yeah.
for that, you're gonna tell them you're gonna do that for a purpose, then you're gonna have to do that as long as that ordinance stays that way.
well, what about even if the ordinance is gone? I mean, we wouldn't, what if Walmart came back and said, you know, that's not what you said and we want our money back?
Yeah, but the fee to Walmart was per tree that was taken down, not what we're gonna do with it, it was per tree when they remove it. That was the cost to the city.
Yeah, but the statute said that we would use that money for landscaping.
Landscaping purposes.
That's the issue.
But if we change,
But if you
if we
change
change
that-
the ordinance, then we can use it for whatever it's changed to.
Well, if you collect money from me,
You're not
And
gonna
I-
be able to,
and-
you're not gonna be able to do it going forward, because that would be collected under false pretenses.
now we've gone full circle.
No, what
That makes no sense whatsoever,
what you did
respectfully.
there, you changed your mind and going to use it for something else, but you can't tell me at that time you're going to use it for one thing and you're going to use it for something else.
My point exactly.
Because there's statute of limitations on actions against the city.
That's my point exactly. When we collected that money, we said we're going to use it for X. Now we're going to change the ordinance and say, hey, we're going to use that money we collected back then when we said we're going to use it for X, and we're going to use it for Y.
Well, it wouldn't be a good business practice. I wouldn't recommend that you do it, but anything that you collect in more than a year, as soon as the city has to be done within 1 year. Because if you didn't, you'd be passing an ordinance and nobody would ever change. That's because public policy.
It's really,
No, I think we can change ordinances. I absolutely think we can change ordinances. But I think if you collected money from me, and when you collected money from me, that fund, that money was going to be used for one particular purpose, in this case, landscaping. And then you change what future money is going to be used for and use my money for that, I'm upset about that.
well, we just did that for the library. That money was taken in that it was going for the schools, but then we used it for the library, which is not the schools.
Yeah, but I don't think that's comparing apples to apples. Because
It's tax dollars is tax dollars.
Well, no, that
Because-
doesn't.
But that was an
What's the
interlocal
tax dollar?
agreement.
That is interlocal agreements.
I understand that, but we're talking about, that money was paid in to the school's facility tax. It wasn't paid in to expand the library.
The school facility tax can be used by the city for anything that constitutes public purpose.
I'm not saying we can't do that. I'm saying look at it from the perspective, it was paid in for a certain purpose, but it's being used for something else.
Right, but
Hey,
from-
Mr. Control, will you come up here if we're going to engage you in conversation? People can't hear. I appreciate it.
It's unfortunate that Walmart wrote that check to the city in the first place, because it should have never been done. The city does not need to be collecting money like that and penalizing people. We're going to discuss that Thursday night. I mean, all we're doing is driving off future business by somebody that can't.
No, I mean, I don't agree with that, but we can discuss that at another time. But, I mean, what we're doing is we're keeping our city beautiful. It's a beautification process. As these businesses come in, we're asking them to replace the trees. So I don't see how, you know, in any way we are doing anything wrong except, you know, asking them to respect our green space.
Well, they're only paying for the ones that they can't replace.
Right.
Well, that's not necessarily true. It's the ones they're choosing not to replace. There's a big difference.
It's the ones that are not being replaced.
That's correct.
Whether they choose or
They
don't.
can put them back because they were there. They're choosing not to, and in lieu of that, they're wanting to write a check to us so they don't have to fool with it.
Right.
That's basically what it is.
I didn't necessarily mean to take us down this road. I'm not a proponent for using either of those funds, the tree fund or the park fund, to I don't know what other word to use, bail us out of the situation we're in.
You can't use the park fund. That was set up in
Well, I'm sorry, you weren't here earlier. There was discussion about whether or not we could pay the park employees' salaries out of the park fund. Not necessarily take it and use it to balance the budget, but to pay their salaries.
Just the
out of it.
part that was used, the salaries used strictly for the park,
Right.
for their upkeep and maintenance and whatever. I believe that's in there.
Which has been done
In
over the
the
last
land
2
trust.
decades.
You could probably do that because the park employees are supposedly, and I'm not attacking them, but most of their time is spent doing things for the park. But as far as converting that to just take it and put it in the
Well,
general fund.
it started off with the street department, and if you're going to look at the street department, you look at every department that's got a restricted fund, that the general fund is paying money out for. That's my opinion about it, no matter what it is. If the general fund is paying money out to a restricted fund, that should be an expense directed at that restricted fund, that it should be.
If you're doing that, you could probably do the people that are working there directly until there's not any fund anymore.
Well, but, you know, we don't want to drain the fund out, but I'm just saying,
But
at
there
this
is-
time, where the dollars are coming from, it's what it's gonna look at.
Well, and I understand even having the conversation and going there, because right now we got to figure out what we're going to do. You know, me personally, I'm dead against taking either one of them, but the reality is we have a problem and we've got to fix it.
Exactly.
And it may not be pretty and it may not be socially correct, but we got to come up with a reasonable way to fix the problem. Because if we come at the end of the year and we cannot balance our budget, and we can't pay our employees, we're all in trouble. And, you know, we knew this was coming, and we should have been doing something months ago.
If the Deer Ridge property is worth $200,000, does anybody have any idea what the out parcel's worth?
Deer Ridge is not even, what's the acreage, 14?
7, I
Or
believe.
7?
7 acres.
8 acres.
It won't bring 200.
It won't. What about the 27-acre out parcel?
We're closer to that bringing 200, maybe
Surely
a
more.
little.
Oh, it'll bring, yeah, it'd probably bring 4 or 5.
So if we sold those two pieces of property that, as I understand it, really are not being used for anything of any significance,
$500,000's a solid figure.
we could
For both of them
do what
combined.
we need to do and start next fiscal year at 0 in the unassigned general fund.
That's if you can find a buyer.
Yes, certainly. There's a lot of ifs in all of this stuff.
There's one buyer that wants the Deer Ridge, Deer Ridge property, but
Anytime you try to offer something up for sale that when you're under duress, you're gonna have a problem selling.
I know.
I don't
I
care what
agree.
it is.
Yeah, I agree. Somebody might make an offer, but it's probably not necessary. I mean, I hate to sell land to balance a budget. I mean, that's, you
that's
know, not a
another
good
thing that's
practice.
been done for the last 20 years here.
Well, I wish we could have
Selling
changed
land
that.
to
I wish,
the budget.
I wish that's
Where the
something
park
we
fund
can
money comes
change.
from.
Because, you know, personally, I know that,
That's where the park money came from. That's what she had set up in her will to do, though.
Well, it looks like to me, at least in the past 4 years, I'm looking at 4 years' worth of numbers, it looks like that the budget's just been balanced by simply using money from schools, facilities tax, and these other funds that are lumped in there to say, hey, we balanced the budget. Is that?
This is,
that-
we're doing it a different way than what we've done
We
before.
actually
No,
started
no,
out.
yeah, I know, but I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out, but I think that's what we've
have.
done in the past.
We are actually started out in 2010 with, $1,752,000 in 2011. I'm sure something was sold to get that. Although 1,800,000 of it was in unassigned. And every year since then, well, in 2010, we spent $572,362 more than we took in. In 2011, $73,219, but we got a loan from the bank, and I'm guessing that had something to do with it. In 2012, $1,715,000, and I'm guessing we
That the fire
may have
station?
done the street or something. I don't,
Fire department.
fire department. 2013, $702,000 more than we took in, and in 2014, $721,000 more than we took in. So we've just gradually, our revenue has stayed pretty consistent. Our operating expenses have always been more than we were taking in.
Well, as far as the last property the city has sold was the old city hall. So really, and that was
Actually, it's probably the fire hall
the fire hall too.
to the public's part of here somewhere. That was like, am I right, with 340,000, something like that? That was the last piece I think that we sold.
We sold it to Publix.
Yeah.
So that was after the old city hall.
Yeah.
I'm trying to come up with some other option.
And that money was focused directly back into the 1.2 for the fire hall that was paid for.
So really, it was sold and reinvested into the fire
Back
hall.
into the fire hall, yes. And if you think about it, it was just about all profit since it was donated by the Bellevue Volunteer Fire Department in the first place. Or right, Wayne?
Everything except for the land.
Everything except for the land, quite well, which is part of the park,
The land came from Dr. Bowie.
like the library.
Well, even so, you mentioned Dr. Bowie, but the purpose was to sell the land to keep the upkeep of the park. It wasn't to balance our budgets.
No, and we're
Her
not.
intent,
To me, all we're saying now is, this is what it costs to upkeep the park. I mean, if we had no employees over there, what would happen to the park? If we did no work over there, what would become of the park? We have to have these things in place in order to do what she asked us to, to do. That's the way I look at it. If not, we're not gonna be able to do what she wants to do. It's just, look, this is what it costs out of general fund. This is what we're gonna take out of the park fund. And that's exactly what it was designated to do, in my opinion. We just haven't been doing it lately. We've been taking it out of everybody, all the taxpayers' funds, money that's coming in and paying for the upkeep of the park.
What does that mean? We'll still be able to do the ADA trail or no?
I think we can. I think we're within $18,000 of doing it with the numbers that we looked at. And I'm sure that we can find another $18,000 somewhere.
I wouldn't be too sure of that.
Somebody out there said, well, we'll try our best. I put it like that. I sound like we got some volunteers out there.
So if we move the street department from the state, pay them out of the state street, that's 152. How much was it going to be if we paid the parks folks out of the parks fund?
Well,
27,
28,
No,
38.
more than that.
the total,
128,381.
well, the total we could do was 154,381.
Exactly.
154.
That was with all the Keith's, right?
But that would
That was
be-
half a key.
That would be taking some of the money that we have already, at least verbally obligated to the ADA trail and the paving.
That would leave $18,000 deficit on that.
Right,
That's
so
what
I would say that what we want to do is a reverse of that, and that is take the money out for the ADA trail and the paving, and then whatever we have left over, take some percentage of that, because we've also got, this forest management plan and some other stuff that we've got to look at. So I don't want to, I would say that we would need to leave some money in there. So if you take the ADA out and the other out, and then say leave $40,000 in there, then you talk about taking $100,000 worth of salaries out of the park fund.
Shannon, do you have anything?
That'd be leaving 100 in there roughly.
Well, yeah, but you've already obligated half of that, but it would leave, still would leave 40 to 50 in there that was unassigned.
But out of that 100, we're gonna be spending it on the 88, what we're supposed to.
Right, and still have a little left over for the forest management plan and in case something came up.
That's 18,000, am I right?
Why could some things that may come up in the forest management plan not be paid out of the general fund?
Well, they
There's
could,
no money in the
Eventually,
general fund.
they're gonna all be paid out of general.
but
There is no money. There's not gonna be any money
We're not
next
talking
year
about
either.
today, but I'm talking about in the future.
In the future, there will be.
2 or 3 years down the
Yeah.
road.
It's gonna be a while.
We are,
Not
I
if we
mean,
move
and
forward
I
with the
even
sale.
said that before, it's gonna take 2 or 3 years
Take a
to
little
even
time, so.
get close to getting us where we,
No,
even though we have growth, even
Okay.
though.
Let's look at one of the things I gave you. Here, this one, the pretty one.
We may not can sell the stuff in 3 months, but it's gonna sell
That-
before 3 or 4 years, if we chose to go that route.
I took what we spent this year and what we're projected to spend in the next 3 months. Tom has projected that our,
Which sheet are we on? I'm sorry.
Expenditure
Pretty
projection, revenue,
This is the rainbow.
the pretty.
What about the firemen that are on a grant? When does that grant end, and what are we?
February.
February next year.
So I took the revenue that we're projecting to come in this year, I took out $360,000 for the reserves, the contracts, the debt service, the gas and tires, $27,000 because the grant for the firemen runs out in February, I think. $696,000 for the insurance, $3,100,000 for salaries, $147,000 for utilities. That all adds up to $5,041,000, leaving us $34,000 to pay. What's left is $608,000. So there's not going to, and this is without any increases in salary, any increases in insurance, any increases in utilities and gas. And, you know, we could only pray that gas will stay at $2 a gallon for another year.
And health insurance is gonna increase, but you said
20%.
Well, and there's no way we can do another budget like we did this year. I mean, we couldn't even do the budget we did this year with the situation we were in. So, but anyway, we did it, now we have to fix it, but what we're gonna have to find real cuts next year. We can't even proceed. And, you know, I don't know how y'all are gonna do it if you can't,
So let me finish explaining this sheet to you. Column one is if we take the $360,000 out for reserves. Column two is if we don't, instead of being short $574,000, we're short $214,000. But I think we're obligated by ordinance, y'all can change that, I guess, but I think we're also obligated to the comptroller. I think, didn't we have to come up with a plan to make people happy or something?
we have to have a plan, we set the amount.
Okay. The next column is with a property tax increase of $350,000, which is about 30 or 40% increase in property tax. The next one is with a property tax, and if we consolidate our loans, and Tom has got a proposal for that. And then the next one is if we don't have a property tax increase, but we consolidate the loans.
well, and we're not even discussing that tonight. I
Right,
mean,
but
even though it gives you a clear,
For us to talk next week, I thought it was such a good idea that Commissioner Bissell had to take out the things that we have to have. We have no choice but to pay these things. We can't cut them in any way. But there's also no way that we can go without supplies or repairs or all of those other things.
Column 5.
Is only a debt consolidation, no tax increase.
Right.
and it still funds the 360,000 and only leaves us 76 in the hole?
Yes.
That's a, okay. Good work
But
on
that's for 1 year,
that. Understand.
because the first year of the plan that he has is there's not going to be any principal payment. After that, the payments are cut in half, but it's spread out over 10 more years. So these are just the things that we're going to need to talk about next week. But when we are thinking that we have any money for anything next year, we do not.
What happens if we don't? I mean, I know the comptroller comes in, but what happens?
Well, if you spend the state
Default.
street aid, I think they put you in jail.
Yeah.
Great.
I don't think
I'm
it's
sure
that
it's me too, but
There
I
are
don't think it's
several
that
things
bad.
like that, that if, you know, if they send the funds and you don't spend them the way you're supposed to, yes, you can be removed from office, go to jail, the chancery court starts operating your government. The other is you default. Like
so
a
we
city-
go bankrupt.
It's like a city bankruptcy, that's what it is. They just don't use, well,
That
they
word,
do use bankruptcy, but they do use it, but they prefer to call it default.
We are in a hole. It is a solvable hole. We just have to quit digging.
I agree.
This fifth column here, I know we're not on this tonight, but you did just discuss it. Is that going off the exact same budget figures we have that we're currently working under for next
Yes.
year? They
Yes.
could even be better if we cut.
Or if we sell.
Well, I'm just
No,
talking,
that's the budget.
I'm just talking about, that's based
That's the
on
revenue coming in and the expenses going out.
this current year's budget used in next year. Okay, that's what I was asking. That puts us in a pretty good spot, I think.
Anything else? Nobody else can come up with any other way than, because I hate robbing these funds. Park fund, tree fund. Any other land? Because once this money's gone, our hands are tied. We can't keep moving forward on projects. If another grant comes along, you know, we can't, that we could use for the park, we don't have the money. I mean, it's gone. If another, you know, we were able to use the tree for the beautification, the streetscape.
You don't have the matching funds, so you can't get the grant.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
And
I'm
there's-
just trying to
there's a
point that out to
matching-
them.
I'm just saying, what you're talking about is the matching funds.
There's
Yeah.
a matching
The difference
fund
how
on
good it
that,
is, you don't have the matching
yeah.
funds.
school sidewalk thing, isn't it?
Yes. No, oh, well, is it 100%?
No, it's 80/20.
80/20, 100% on the construction, but 80/20 on the engineering.
There was a 100% figure in there somewhere.
Well, I can't figure out why we keep saying there's not gonna be any money there if we're talking about next year putting 360,000 in reserves. I don't understand why we keep saying we're not gonna have any.
It's probably
If we
gonna be
if we
impossible
voted,
to
if we're
do.
not, but if we voted on column 5 tonight, we're gonna put $360,000 in reserves.
Right, but we're starting with 500,000 in the hole.
I don't get how we come up with, we're starting with 500,000 in the hole.
We started the year with 161,000 in the hole. Really, the audit said 138,000. I'm not sure how we came up with 161.
I took it off the audit. I don't get it.
Maybe I don't have the final audit. That could be it.
Can you explain it?
Well, this is how I see it, and I try to keep it articulated in a way that y'all can understand what's going on in my brain. We have a deficit of $214,000 and then we have some monies that need to be put into these funds. So, if we take $150,000 from the street aid, that improves what we have to put into that fund. We only have to put
$60,000 into that fund, which is a negative balance that we still have, and we improve our bookkeeping in terms of the amount of money that we are under in terms of this year's budget, the $214,000 by $150,000. So we're now got 64 that we owe there, and we've got a negative 60 here. So we're at 124 that we need. All right, if we take 100,000 from Bowie Park Fund and use that against the 64 that we are short for the annual budget, then that budget is now solvent and solved. And we have 36,000 to be applied against the 60 that we need for the street. So now we're down for the street fund of having a need to get $24,000. Okay. If we take 80,000 from the tree fund, we then solve that $24,000 and have $56,000 left over to be applied against the school facilities tax, which is the other deficit program, which I understand is $400,000, right?
Or
Close to 490.
Okay, $500,000. So you then have, now you're down to like 440 that you need to make that go to zero. All right? Now, how much money do you anticipate us having in the bank after all the bills are paid in June? Cash in the checking account.
Just in the general fund?
Uh-huh.
I'll tell you, $744,181.
that's what we're supposed to have.
That's what we're supposed to have.
That's fund balance, that's not,
That's-
you're asking cash in the bank.
Right, how
Oh,
much
cash.
money's in the
I'm sorry. I
bank?
thought you meant how much are we supposed to have?
Well, I mean, are you talking about an operating?
Uh-huh.
Or,
We're
Give me-
either
give me
gonna
a
have
second.
229,000 or 129,000.
Why, what's the difference?
My projection is,
Okay. All right, well, let's just split the difference then, and say we'll have
I think
180,
his is probably gonna be right.
okay, we say we have $180,000, okay? Or $200,000, make my math still work in my head here. So now you're down to $250,000 deficit that you need. You sell the Deer Ridge property, you take the budget cuts that the Wayne and his staff can come up with, and any further increases in revenue that we get from now to the end of the year, and you should be able to come up with $250,000, and you start zero, which is where you're talking about.
Yeah, but when I said we were gonna be around $500,000, it was gonna take $500,000 to just start zero, it was without all those things you just proposed. I mean, I'm glad you put all that together and laid it out, but I'm saying if, without doing any of this stuff, we're gonna be at.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with your point. My point is, we all acknowledge that this is the point. I mean, we've got that need. To my way of thinking, though, the realization is that we do have the ability to solve all those issues by doing this. Do I like that we have to take from the funds? No, but if it's important to us as a group to be at zero, we can make that happen. Now, the law says that we don't have to have a pity in the operating checking account at the end of the year. We can I know that's not practical because we got bills to pay in July, but the reality is that is not, that account you zero out for purposes of the audit.
Start at zero, end at zero.
You start at zero and you end at zero every year,
Except for the state street aid.
except for the state street aid. But you've pretty much, you've been able to take care of that because you can take that $60,000 under what I just said and actually put that into an account. So you meet your legal obligation, you realizing that the money that you would have taken out of your general fund to pay the school facilities tax, you're going to have to, that's where that first assessment of the 360's got to go next year, is to bring that to current. But you're not deviating from your plan. You are actually just solving the problem and moving into the 360. The $30,000 a month that into the reserve is what's going to solve the long-term problem.
But we're obligated to make sure the money is in the school facility tax at the end of the year. I mean, we gotta repay.
The auditors let it go last year.
So
You
even
have to have a
though,
plan to repayment.
okay, but we didn't do it.
We don't have to.
Well, we set the plan up
3
to
year
Start
start
the plan up.
next
For a
year.
year,
To begin.
okay.
We set it up to start in July.
Now, we can't run next fiscal year and not do that with that money that we've set aside. We can't just change the plan and say, no, we're not going to do that. But in terms of getting us to where you're talking about here, I mean, it takes some action, but I do believe it's achievable.
One thing you might want to think about is, at some time, the county's gonna have to add to the schools out here if we keep growing. And when they do, they're gonna ask for money from the school facilities fund. And that's, it's not like a clean water fund, but it's about as close as you'll get to it. And I would even suggest, if you're going to do that, if you're going to take something from the tree fund, that you have a plan to restore those funds, because like you said a minute ago, you did take that on the basis of this would be for landscaping, whatever that is. And this clearly isn't for landscaping. I think this board would have the authority to move that around, but to avoid that potential problem, I would have a plan for replacing those funds that I took out over 4 or 5 or 6 years, whatever, for what that ordinance says is to be used for, landscaping, whatever that is. And that way, I don't think you'd run into a problem, because if you've got a challenge on it, you can say the legislative board decided to borrow from that fund and they've got a plan for replacing it.
Isn't that in essence, we're just borrowing money at 0% interest I mean, we're just borrowing money to try to.
Well, that's what we did with the school facilities tax.
Well,
Then
the
it's
city
We
can,
borrowed it.
the city can give itself a 0% interest loan easier than they could change the whole direction of the fund.
Yeah, I know, I mean, that's what I'm saying, I mean, it's
But I
great terms, but we're just essentially still borrowing money.
yeah, I would
Any way you look at it.
I would hate to take it out of there, because it does destroy somewhat your credibility with the community.
But maybe I'm not articulating this properly, but you don't have to actually take the money out. It's not that you're going to take the $80,000 and then spend it. The $80,000 is going to be a bookkeeping entry that you use to offset a deficit over here. You didn't spend the $80,000, you just used it to offset a bookkeeping entry.
And you,
No, we didn't take it out physically and spend it, but it's still gone. It's gone. It's out of this account, and it is now being used to make us balance. Over here, it's not available.
And if the county came to us tomorrow and said, we want to build a new school, we want you to give XYZ that's supposed to be in your account to pay up, we don't have it.
Then we could go into a real long story about how they've shortchanged us.
We'll put you in charge of that.
Can't do that with the state street aid.
No.
I'll go back to what I said earlier. I mean, it looks like to me to get to where I would like to see us be, I think Tom would like to see us be there too, I think.
I think
hope.
everybody would.
Everybody would. To get there, we would have to do every one of these things.
And if we need to, we need to.
Right.
I think we're going to.
I think we will too.
Yeah.
But I just don't I think we need to use the fund balances in whatever way we can and set up however we need to do to replenish it. But the selling of the properties, I don't think we're gonna do it that quick. And if we do, we're gonna give it away and we're gonna
Take a
lose.
beat.
We're gonna take a beat.
We definitely do not want to take a beating.
No.
Well, that's what
I
I'm saying.
think
If we could, we can do it without selling that property
Oh, yes.
today. Or in July the 1st. I definitely think we can do it with the steps that we talked about today. But move forward with the liquidation of some of that property if we don't need it.
If we do that, and then we follow through with column 5, the 360 figure won't stay there. We can start repaying straight out of that figure there. So we may not end up with 2 if we put 80 back in 2 different funds.
Well,
But then you've still got 200 in reserve.
if we used 152 from State Street Aid, 100 from the park fund to pay those employees, and then Wayne, you said 35 from the drug fund?
Yes, sir.
That gets us to $287, $287,000. Yeah, I wish that was all, yeah. $287,000. So that gets us up there. We're certainly balancing the budget, and
Been a
that
little
covers the
bit of-
negative 204, or the 214,000, and it gives us some money to go toward replenishing those.
And it gives us time to sell land without having to,
Give it away.
Give it
Without
away.
having to give it away. So that's a short-term
And you could even do it as a
fix.
plan to replace all of those into the fund.
That's correct.
yeah. So with the sale of land, we could replace the funds potentially.
Well, that's the only way I would agree to do it.
Well, I mean, but I'm saying with the sale of the land, yeah, I want to replace them too. I mean, 100% with replacing the funds. But also, we do have to consider we need an operating budget into next year.
We can,
There are several times this year that it was tight for them.
Are 5% cuts even realistic?
We're gonna get as close as we can, of course. Donna said between 20 and 63. I did a rundown last week. I was thinking around 40, but I haven't looked at it close enough to tell you for sure. I have given the stuff to the department heads.
put 40 on that
If we
287.
put 40 there, that gets us up to 327.
And then worse, even if you put 20, I mean, that,
Right, we're still,
Over 3.
so that would put us going into next year still a negative, depending on which number we use, 180 to $200,000 in the unassigned.
Plus whatever you have in the checking account.
229.
No,
See?
that includes that.
No, it doesn't. Not following his figures, it doesn't. Doesn't include what he has in the checking account.
No, if we're ending the year with 239, I'm not including that.
So you are over $500,000, which means you are solvent.
I guess I look at the state street aid money differently. Well, hang on, we actually wouldn't have that because we're gonna use the state street aid to
Yeah.
pay the 152, so we wouldn't have that. That's part of our solution. We're taking
No, we have already
152,000.
spent that
We've
money,
already spent it.
so.
We've already paid it. There's no bill to be paid. You're moving a bookkeeping
Bookkeeping entry, I get
entry.
you.
So you're reducing what you owe the state street aid by 152. At the same time, you're adding to your deficit by 152. Simply by the way you charge the expense.
And you wouldn't be doing anything that hadn't been done over the last 2 decades here.
And you wouldn't be doing anything that wasn't being used on the streets. There's nothing, it's just, and that's why, I mean, it's a nice approach to only use it on paving and gutters and all that other stuff. But the reality is, that's why that it's legal to use it for employees is so small towns can
And it's what it should be
balance.
used for. It
Well,
should be used for that,
I
the
don't-
salaries and things that are solely dedicated to that fund or the street aid or whatever it is. There's nothing wrong with paying those salaries out of those funds.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong, and I know it's been done, but we are in dire need of paving. So eventually, we got to consider, that's the only way we could do some repairs to the streets is by not spending that money every year. I mean, so I understand for this situation, we may not have a choice, but, you know, I really wouldn't want to pay all the street aid salary out of it because it sets us up where we cannot do improvements to our community.
Well, this is just a question, and I do not know the answer, so what happens if a bridge falls in?
Insurance
We have insurance on it? Okay.
through TML.
On a bridge?
Public right away.
They just fail? I mean, it just,
Well, I mean, if it failed because somebody caused it to
Well,
fall, they're
that's
liable
right,
for
they're
it. But if it
liable,
just
but-
fell on its own, it's gonna be covered just,
As well as any other property that the city owns through TML. I think, is that what you're saying?
I don't know what the
I don't either.
deductible would be, but
You enlighten us on that.
Trying to think what bridge we would have,
Deductible would be.
other than one on Horn
Horn
Tavern
Tavern, that may be the only bridge we have.
West. Okay. And Northwest, there's one on Northwest too. But I don't believe they're covered under TML.
I think that would get us up there to where we'd
Yeah,
be zero.
We just need to come to the conclusion that
And then granted, on the 1st of July, we're gonna have to take some of that money out to, it'd be his operating expense, but we're also going to be putting in the 360. So if we don't, if we start then putting in the 360 like we've been planning, then, by the end of next year, we've got the money in the bank for that school tax fund, and then we can start to really put some money back for capital improvements, general.
360 will be put in over the course of the entire fiscal year. So,
The design was at 30, when the check comes in on the 20th of the month, $30,000 goes into the reserve.
Except on the second year, we have to start paying our debts again.
Right, well.
So that,
But you've also, right now, we're running, if you look at the state sales tax numbers, which either 60 or 90 days, even though we didn't get what we wanted, we still got 3% higher than what the average was around the state for local. We're almost 9% increase versus the state's 6% increase. Remember, we're still debating on this whether it's 60 days or 90 days lag, but we do know there's a lag. So pretty much you can look at the state figures now and see, and there's still an increase. They're showing an increase. So if we realize the same increase, or even if we drop back and realize the state's increase, money actually gets to us. Next year's budget will actually have, if we follow the principle that we set in place, that we would start with revenue not transferred in, just base revenue, and that would be our ceiling. We're going to have more to work with next year than what we're talking about here. Now, not a lot, but every little bit will help. I mean, I don't see how we cannot do the restructuring thing. And will that cause an issue 2 years out? We'll have to figure that out, have to figure that in, but we won't be we will have had 2 years worth of increase and some other stuff, so I don't know.
well, it will cost us $500,000, but
Well,
Over, $500,000 over a decade,
Save us,
$500,000 over a decade.
yes.
while in the first year putting 360 in reserve. So before you make year 2, you could have 700,000 already in general fund waiting to be applied in the year you're talking about.
Yeah, you would, yeah, you would, I don't know, it depends on when the payment fell, but generally speaking, you would have more than 360 for sure.
But your payment's gonna be less if you restructure too, as I look at it.
But even with that, we are gonna have to stick on a tight budget and not be spending money. I mean, we've gotta treat it like it is there to, you know, pay back.
And that's also with no cuts. If we find cuts, going
Well,
there,
I
that
mean,
number's even,
The salaries may be a little higher because I don't have that, I'm not sure when the fire chief came in on the, so we may be paying more in salaries now than we were at the beginning of the year, so
How
that
much
may
did we
increase
save
by
on the
some.
fire chief this year? 6 months salary,
It's,
7 months.
7 months salary?
it's not gonna matter, it's how much we're paying now, we've got to roll over into
Right.
July and August, and it's gonna be more than we had this year.
It'll be less than for the total year that we're forecasting, because he's making less money.
Well,
He's
and,
making less money than what the current chief was making.
Well, we just didn't plan anything
Yeah, I understand.
for the first 7 months.
well, and for the record, Wayne and Tom have made cuts because they did not replace positions as they left. So even though we didn't let anybody go, we did shave our staff and did save money, but it still wasn't enough to, I mean, do you have a figure on how much?
I just know we didn't replace Kevin Holsinger, and we didn't replace the IT person. We saved money with the fire chief for 7 months. And the current fire chief is making, you know, basic pay right now, you know, so that was a big savings there, you know, so.
And you didn't add any new positions?
I mean, the only one we replaced Delana, we felt that was a critical position when she moved on to her past job. So that was just a basic swap there, you know, so.
The court system is something that we need to look at because we've gone from 46,000 in 2010 to 109,000 in expenses. I have no idea what that is, but. And they're not bringing in as much money as they were. So it's just something we need to look at as part of the process.
as compared back to 2010, you're saying?
Well, and what is it, did y'all get a figure? Because I still have a hard problem, or hard time on the restructuring. I'm not against the restructuring, but I have a hard time putting the police cars in there that we just got a loan for not even a year ago, and then adding that in. Do we have what it would look like if we took the police cars out?
No, ma'am, I don't. I can have him pull it out, but as I stated earlier, my reasoning behind that is because we've got several long-term assets that go well beyond the 10 to 14-year period. We've got a 40-year life on this building, and also 25 years on one fire truck, and longer on some other fire trucks too. Not longer than 25, but longer than the time period. So.
The savings is greater than what pulling the
I believe
cars out or close?
Yes, I believe it's in our best interest to put it all in a nice bow and do it and have a 2.78 fixed rate on this building. I think is very important, and as well as increasing our cash flow by $750,000 in the first 2 years.
Well, and I mean, interest rate is, I mean, we've been lucky, it's been low for a while, but I mean, that's a hot mess. It can go, yeah, it can go up, and I think this building, I know that, when they really when they originally, the board that did the balloon note thought that they would have it paid off. So it just goes to show you, you never know what a new group of people may think, and that's not a good practice. We need to make sure that they know exactly what they're responsible to pay each year.
It's like building a building on a credit card.
Mm-hmm.
You end
Yes.
up 23.99.
Any other questions?
So we'll meet again, but can we go ahead and start get a realtor to go ahead and give us a value of the properties as of right now? Without a meeting, or I guess I have to say that from a meeting, or can he do? Yeah.
Thursday night.
Okay.
We'll have to.
Well, they're fixing to auction off this piece of property right next door here. You'll get a general idea of what people are willing to pay for property when that goes up.
Yeah, but this
Just
is
a general idea.
residential, yeah. Well,
Commercial now.
we were in a meeting, the economic
Yeah,
development
that's
meeting
commercial,
last
too.
night. Wayne, do you remember what they were saying? At the economic, we had a bunch of realtors there last night. Do you remember what they were saying?
Pretty expensive per acre on commercial.
Commercial, but we don't have any commercial.
No, this is residential, but they didn't really give a big idea on how much of the residential. But right now, from what we're hearing in codes, we're looking at a building lot ready to build on somewhere around 30,000. Yeah,
An acre.
An acre?
yes, per lot.
No,
Per
well,
lot.
Those are
less,
all based on quarter.
A
some of
building
them
lot.
less than half
Some
acre.
of them less, but normally a half acre lot's gonna run around 30,000 ready to build on.
So do you want me to present anything Thursday night, or can y'all?
Well, I mean, this is televised, but I mean, if we're gonna vote, if you wouldn't mind being here, being prepared in case there's some other questions. Do we need to vote, and this is a solution, or,
Well, somebody will have to make a motion to put what plan in the motion we're gonna take. And we'll have to vote on that.
I guess we need direction on what you guys want us to prepare, or if you want us to prepare anything.
Well, I would like to know the values of the property. It doesn't mean we're gonna sell them. There's no reason they couldn't talk to realtors and just ask them
What they think?
what they think, even if it's not an official listing or, you know.
And your numbers may be exact, but just the exact salaries, if they're not exact, that we would be putting into, taking from the state street aid and the, which I guess we
They're
agree,
pretty doggone close.
not agree, but I guess we said we would only do 100,000 from the,
You're gonna have to prepare a budget amendment.
Right.
To move that.
Want all this ready by Thursday? Or
Yeah.
I guess.
Everything but the restructuring and all that, because we really can't do that until we sit down and finish having that conversation. This just is the end of the year plan
Right.
to be ready Thursday.
Budget cuts don't have to be voted on by us because that's something that Wayne is city manager and you as CFO. The only action that has to be taken in order to put what I think we've all agreed, or at least sort of agreed on, is the budget amendment to move the money today and from the Blue Park Fund to
Want to do one salary drug fund?
and get one out of the drug fund if you want. But that way it's across the board.
Well, and, you know, the thing about it is, we really could wait on that until we know closer, because in case we needed to, or, you know, but
We don't
if we're
have to
gonna
do a
run out of
final
time.
Thursday night.
Yeah,
Him having that for us doesn't mean we have to do it.
just go ahead and get it voted and moved.
Actually, it'd probably be better if he waited and y'all just make a decision on selling the property or whatever steps you have to take to do that.
It only has to be done by the end of June.
Yeah.
For us, I mean, and up, and expenses went down, and you wouldn't have to take as much.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have to take as much money out of those funds. So, we will have to do a budget amendment, by whatever it is, but by waiting, you do,
See the future.
yeah.
Do y'all have a current debt-to-asset ratio?
No, I mean, I don't know, do you?
I believe.
I think it was in the last audit.
Yeah, I believe we do in the audit.
Could you figure that up and let us know Thursday
Yeah,
night?
it's under 10%. It's well under our debt management recommendation, but I'll have it.
Oh, I hadn't even thought about that. There is a limit on how much we can do.
20%.
But we're under
We're
it.
not even
Okay.
close.
We're not taking any more new debt.
We're not even close. It's, last time I figured it, it was 8.1%. Equity. Sum total. That includes the recent purchases that wouldn't have a lot of equity, like the fire trucks and the police. A lot of long-term.
Equity build, to build.
Our equipment's paid for, you know, we don't have a lot of debt for that.
So just to say again, to make sure that I'm clear, with these changes, with moving the positions, the funds over from like street aid and the park, and them cutting 5%, that will bring us at zero without the land, or did we include the land?
Without the land.
Land.
I don't think we can calculate that close this quick and get any kind of fair market equity out of it at all.
But with selling the land, we could fund that
Next
reserve
year.
balance quickly.
And which would be great.
And we, it's a good idea to repay we need to repay these funds.
Right, you wouldn't.
I think it's a good idea, but we would be the,
As I understood it, we're not touching the tree fund, so there's nothing to be repaid there. And then it would just be the park fund, getting the money back.
okay. Any other comments, questions?
So I guess we'll just get the value and have that ready Thursday. I guess Brandy's already got has she got the packets out, or they'll go out
They're
Wednesday?
out.
They're already out?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's this Thursday. We can get everything back. Okay.
I'll check with some real estate people tomorrow and just see if anybody has any idea.
Okay, I appreciate it. Okay, if that's all, I guess we'll close the workshop. Next week's meeting is at same Tuesday? Are you still doing?
Thursday.
Thursday?
It's Thursday, but we've got board this Thursday.
No, I'm in the finance. You were referring, so it's Thursday? I want to know when our next finance meeting. Okay. And is this another group joint effort?
Can be, as of right now, we haven't got that far.
Okay, well, if that's it, we'll adjourn this and move on.
I'm not sure if the meeting is at 6 or 7.